They threw a paralyzed German Shepherd puppy into a dumpster in broad daylight. It was 92 degrees in Miami, the sun bouncing off car roofs like flashes from a camera. I was walking behind a strip mall on my lunch break, cutting through the alley behind a Cuban bakery when I heard it. Just a faint, broken whimper. It didn't sound like a cry for help. It sounded like something already giving up. The sound was coming from a green dumpster behind the bakery, half filled with plastic bags and broken bread trays. I froze. I've heard a lot of things in alleys, but this pierced me. I stepped closer. Another whimper, weaker. I lifted the lid. The smell hit me first. Sour milk, rotting dough, plastic. Then between crumpled cardboard and a torn black garbage bag, I saw two eyes. Huge, brown, and too still for any healthy pup. He didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't blink, just stared up at me as if he'd been waiting. He was maybe 4 months old, a German Shepherd puppy, covered in dirt and something sticky. His back legs were twisted unnaturally, almost folded under him. One of his ears was half torn, crusted with dried blood. The rest of him was silent, motionless, except those eyes part. He wasn't crying anymore, just watching me. I leaned into the dumpster, heart pounding. His body was wedged between a soaked pizza box and a bag of kitchen waste. I reached for him and my fingers sank into the wet cardboard. He didn't move. My gut twisted. Was he even alive? I put my hand gently on his side, warm but barely. Then a tiny sound escaped his throat. Not a bark, not even a proper whine, just air and fear. "My name's Michael," I whispered like that could help anything. "You're okay now?" As I wrapped my arms under his limp body, I realized something that made my stomach drop. He wasn't just weak. He wasn't just injured. He couldn't move at all. I lifted him out slowly, careful not to bend what couldn't bend. His fur was soaked through in places, matted with grime, oil, and who knows what else. He weighed almost nothing, just bones, skin, and the heaviness of whatever had been done to him. His front legs twitched slightly when I shifted him against my chest, but his back legs dragged behind like they didn't belong to him. I've held broken animals before. I've volunteered in rescues for over a decade, but this felt different. This felt like someone had taken hope itself and tossed it into the trash. And yet he was warm, breathing, watching. I got him to the sidewalk, found a patch of shade next to the wall of the bakery, and laid him down gently. His body folded like cloth. I touched his paws. No reaction. I touched the space between his ribs. His skin fluttered under my fingers, but his limbs didn't follow. I reached for my phone with one hand, the other still on his chest. I called the clinic we worked with. "It's Michael Harris," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've got a paralyzed puppy, German Shepherd, about 4 months found in a dumpster behind Law Bakery. I need someone ready now." I hung up and looked back down. He stared up at me, still silent. Something in his gaze, it wasn't panic, it wasn't pain even. It was surrender, like he'd already decided what was coming. And then as I wiped a smear of grease from his ear, he made a sound, the faintest raspy squeak. His nose twitched once. I froze. "You're still in there," I whispered. "You're still fighting." And suddenly I knew I wasn't leaving this alley alone. I cradled him tighter, stood up, and turned toward the van. The sun was blazing now, casting hard shadows on the pavement. I felt sweat rolling down my back. He didn't flinch, didn't resist, just pressed his head slightly into my arm like it was the first safe place he'd known in days. I opened the passenger door and laid him across a blanket I kept for emergency rescues. As I reached to close the door, he gave one last effort to lift his head, but it flopped sideways. His body couldn't hold the weight of his own hope. I drove like I was holding a candle in a hurricane. Every bump in the road felt like a betrayal. Every stoplight felt like a lifetime. I kept one hand on the wheel and the other gently resting on the puppy's chest, feeling the shallow rise and fall, terrified it might stop between one breath and the next. I spoke to him even though I didn't know if he could hear me. "You're okay, little guy. I've got you. Just hang on." He didn't respond. But once, just once, his tail shifted like it remembered how to be a tail. It didn't wag. It didn't move again, but it tried. That broke me. My rescue van isn't fancy. The AC wheezes, the upholstery is worn thin, and the console rattles like something's always loose. But it saved lives. It's the one place in my world where broken things get a second chance. I glanced down at him as I pulled onto Flagler Street. His eyes were still open, still watching, but they were starting to drift, glazed like he was slipping. His body was so limp I kept thinking he was gone. But no, he was still breathing. Barely. I pushed harder on the gas. The vet clinic came into view. A flat building with faded blue paint and a rusted gate. But inside, miracles happened there. I slammed the van into park and flew around to the passenger side. When I opened the door, he didn't even flinch. His head had slumped sideways, mouth slightly open, tongue dry, and pale. I scooped him up. He weighed even less now. Somehow, like the fight was draining out of him minute by minute. My shoulder was wet where his head had rested. But I didn't care. I kicked the door open with my foot. "Emergency intake," I shouted, voice cracking. "Paralyzed German Shepherd puppy found in a dumpster. He's crashing." The front desk nurse stood up so fast her chair fell backward. A tech rushed out with a gurney. I laid him down, and the second I stepped back, they were on him, checking vitals, lifting lids, calling out measurements. I stood frozen in the middle of the lobby, arms empty, hands shaking. I realized I hadn't even noticed the smell of my clothes until now. Sour garbage, rotting bread, hopelessness. One of the techs looked up, grim. "We'll do what we can, but he's bad." Behind the glass, I saw them working over him. Oxygen mask, IV line, cold compresses, and in the center of it all, a broken puppy who had no idea someone finally cared. I pressed my palm to the window. I wasn't ready to let go, and neither was he. They said the odds were low. So low they didn't even quote a percentage. He's severely malnourished, neurological damage, possibly spinal trauma. It could have been from birth or from impact. We won't know unless we scan. I heard their words, but they echoed like voices through water. I just stared at the glass where he lay, motionless under the heat lamp. His eyes blinked once, slow, heavy, like it took all his strength. He couldn't lift his head. He couldn't even roll to one side. "He's in pain," I asked. The vet hesitated. "We've given something gentle. He's stable for now, but there's very little motor function. If he remains completely paralyzed, especially with internal damage, well, some owners would consider—" "No," I said it before she could finish. My voice cracked, but it was final. "He's not garbage." The room went silent for a second. The vet nodded quietly and made a note. I stayed for hours. I didn't have a reason to be there anymore. Nothing I could do, but I couldn't leave. I couldn't stand the idea that he'd be alone again, even for a second. Not after the way I found him, not after someone made the choice to throw him away like he didn't matter. His name wasn't on the chart yet, just stray MGGSD mix, approximately 4MO. That made it worse. He didn't even have a name. When the room finally emptied for shift change, I walked back to the window one more time. He was still there, still breathing, still blinking somehow. I raised my hand to the glass again. "You've made it this far, buddy," I whispered. "You don't get to quit now." He didn't move. Not his ears, not his tail, not even his head. But something in those eyes shifted just enough to feel like a yes. I sat down in the chair outside the exam room and pulled out my phone. No calls, no messages. I should have gone back to work, should have been somewhere else, but none of that mattered now. This German Shepherd puppy wasn't just another rescue. He wasn't a statistic. He was a fighter. And if he wasn't giving up, then neither was I. So I made a decision. I would name him tomorrow when I knew he was staying. When I knew he'd be coming with me, I would not let him disappear nameless into a file and fade like he'd never existed. But I had no idea yet what kind of fight was ahead. I came back the next morning with a name in my mouth and a knot in my chest. The clinic opened at 8. I was there by 7:40, leaning against the wall, coffee in one hand, leash and collar in the other, both of which felt heartbreakingly optimistic. He wasn't ready for either, but I needed to believe. When they let me in, I rushed straight to the recovery room. He was still there, still breathing, but something had changed. His eyes followed me, not just a glance, real tracking. I crossed the room and his gaze moved with me, like he knew me, like he remembered that I was the one who pulled him from the filth in heat and silence. "Hey, buddy," I said softly, crouching beside his crate. "I was scared you'd give up on me overnight." He didn't make a sound, but his ear twitched. One of the techs passed by carrying meds. "That's a good sign," she said with a small smile. "He watched you come in. That's new." I slipped my hand through the cage bars and rested it gently on the towel near his paw. "You need a name," I said. "Can't keep calling you little guy forever." I'd been thinking about it all night. Names like Lucky, Chance, Phoenix, they felt too obvious, too hollow. But one stuck in my head and wouldn't leave. Scooter. I said, "You're going to roll before you run, but one day you'll move." I believed that. The name felt right, like it already belonged to him. I said it again, Scooter. And for the first time since I pulled him from the dumpster, his lips moved just barely, just enough for me to swear he was trying to respond. He was still completely paralyzed from the chest down. The vet confirmed it, but he was eating slowly, drinking, too. And when I spoke, his eyes lit up. Not like a miracle had happened, but like he could still feel something inside. Connection, safety, maybe even hope. That night I stayed until they asked me to go. Scooter licked a drop of water from my fingertip. It wasn't a big moment. No orchestra, no spotlight, just a paralyzed German Shepherd puppy laying motionless on a towel who had chosen to live one more day. And as I turned to leave, the vet placed a hand on my shoulder. "If he shows even the smallest sign of movement," she said, "it changes everything." I looked back through the window one more time. Then we better be ready for a miracle. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, the way his ears twitched when I said his name, the faint lift at the corners of his mouth when I offered him water. I kept replaying the same question in my mind. Was that a reflex, or was that Scooter choosing to fight? By morning, I was back at the clinic. The tech on shift, a kind woman named Elena, waved me over before I even asked. "You need to see this," she said, leading me into the exam room where Scooter lay on his fleece blanket, wrapped in soft towels like a newborn. The heat lamp was off. He didn't need it anymore. I knelt beside him, his head turned slowly, but unmistakably in my direction. Elena smiled. "That's not a reflex." My chest swelled. "Scooter," I whispered, my hand brushing his shoulder. Then it happened. His front paw twitched. Not a spasm, not a jerk. It was slow, shaky, but purposeful. I saw it. I felt it. I looked up at Alina wide-eyed. "That was real." She nodded, her voice soft. "He's trying." The vet came in minutes later, checking vitals again, doing light response tests. He pinched gently at Scooter's toes. No movement in the back legs, but when he reached the shoulder, there it was again. Another twitch. The smallest shift of muscle. A signal. "He's got upper motor response," the vet said. "It's limited, but it's something." I dropped to my knees, forehead against the side of the crate, tears burning the edges of my eyes. This German Shepherd puppy, paralyzed and thrown away like trash, had just flipped the script. The clinic staff surrounded us, quiet, reverent. Everyone knew this mattered. Everyone felt it. That afternoon, we met with a specialist. "If you're willing," she said, "we can start light stimulation therapy. Nothing intense, just massage, movement exercises. Get his brain talking to his limbs again. And I think we should fit him for wheels." "Wheels?" I asked, caught off guard. "A mobility cart for now. It gives him independence, builds strength, and maybe with time, he won't need it." I looked at Scooter. He looked at me. And then, God help me. He blinked twice like he understood. "We're doing it," I said, because that paw twitch wasn't just a muscle firing. It was a promise. Scooter's first day in the wheelchair was a disaster. And still, it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. They brought the cart out like it was a chariot. Lightweight, custom fit, padded for his little frame. It had bright red wheels and a black harness that cradled his hips gently, lifting the weight off his useless legs. He looked ridiculous and perfect. We placed him into it carefully, his front paws stiff with tension, his body shaking from the strain. At first, he just stood there frozen, confused, helpless. Then I crouched in front of him, held out a tiny treat in one hand, and whispered, "Come on, Scooter. Let's try." Nothing. So I crawled backward on the tile floor like a fool in front of half the clinic staff, clicking my tongue like a puppy trainer. That's when he did it. One front paw, then the other. A slow, lopsided wobble forward. The wheels rolled once, then twice, and Scooter moved. The entire room gasped. I thought I'd fall apart right then. He didn't go far, maybe 3 feet before he stopped, trembling with exhaustion. But he had done it. He had taken himself from one place to another. That mattered more than anything. I scooped him up and kissed his head, not caring about the dirt or the drool or the stairs. "You did it, Scooter. You moved." From that day forward, we practiced every morning. Little sessions outside the clinic, then in the shaded park nearby. His progress was slow, frustratingly so, but every roll, every inch was earned. He began to anticipate it. When he saw the harness, his ears perked. When he felt the straps, he held his breath like a diver ready to jump. And the first time he rolled through the grass, sunlight in his face, wind brushing his ears, something extraordinary happened. His tail wagged just once, just enough to say, "This feels like life." He still couldn't move his back legs, not yet, but the rest of him, his mind, his will, his soul had woken up. That night, I watched a video we'd taken of him in the chair, and I realized I wasn't just looking at a recovery story. I was watching a beginning. But what came next, none of us were ready for. We brought him a toy, a small blue ball with little ridges and a faint squeak when bitten. I didn't expect much. With his body still learning how to move again, I figured he might sniff it, maybe nudge it with his nose. But Scooter had other plans. I set the ball in front of him during one of our practice sessions at the park. It rolled an inch, barely, just enough to catch the light. He stared at it like it was something ancient and sacred. Then he shoved his nose forward slowly, unsteadily, and gave it a nudge. The ball rolled again. He followed it. 2 wobbly pushes of his front legs, wheels squeaking in the grass, tongue hanging out the side of his mouth. He reached the ball, nosed it again, and this time let out a soft, strange noise. A bark that didn't know how to be a bark yet. That was the moment. It didn't matter that he couldn't run or chase or leap. It didn't matter that his legs still dragged uselessly beneath him. What mattered was that Scooter, this 4-month-old German Shepherd puppy who had been discarded like trash, was playing. And God help me, I laughed. I laughed and cried like a man losing his mind, watching this little fighter with red wheels for legs push a toy across the grass like it was the best thing he'd ever done. Because maybe it was. He played until he collapsed, panting, tongue-laying, eyes full of something I hadn't seen in him yet. Joy, not survival, not pain, just joy. I sat beside him, wiped the drool from his chin, and whispered, "You're doing it, Scooter. You're really living." He turned his head into my palm, closed his eyes, and sighed. Later that afternoon, the vet approached me. "I've been thinking," she said, "if he's this responsive, there's something else we can try. Hydrotherapy. It might give him more freedom in the water, less gravity, a chance to strengthen what's still there." I blinked. "You mean swimming?" "Not quite," she said, "but close. We'll support him. Let his legs feel weightless. Sometimes that's all they need to remember what they were made to do." I looked down at Scooter. His eyes were open again, looking up at me with that familiar, quiet determination. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, let's do it." Because something in me knew. This puppy wasn't finished surprising us yet. The pool room smelled like warm salt and rubber. It wasn't much. A converted therapy space behind the clinic, barely big enough for a kiddie pool and a lifting harness. But for Scooter, it might as well have been an ocean. He looked terrified at first, his paws scrambled against my arm as I lowered him into the water, his breath coming fast, eyes wide. I held him close, whispered into his ear, "You're okay, I've got you. Just feel it." Once his body settled into the water, something shifted. His muscles, normally stiff or limp, began to relax. The weightlessness wrapped around him like a blanket, and for the first time since I found him, his body wasn't working against him. He floated. The therapist stood beside us, gentle hands under his belly, guiding him in slow circles. "Let's see what happens," she said softly. I stood at the edge, heart in my throat, watching every twitch, every shift in his little frame. Then slowly, so slowly, I saw it. His back leg moved. It didn't jerk or spasm. It didn't kick. It bent. Scooter bent his leg. I nearly shouted but caught myself. "Did you see that?" I whispered hoarsely. The therapist smiled, her eyes wide. "That's not just spinal reflex. That's voluntary." He kicked again, a shallow paddle, like a memory trying to resurface. Then another, one paw, then the other. He was swimming. It was awkward, unbalanced, and barely moved him an inch. But he was doing it. Tears hit my face before I even realized they'd started. "He's moving," I said. "He's really moving." Scooter's mouth opened in a silent puff of air, his version of a bark. His ears perked slightly, and for one shining moment, his tail floated upward, limp but present. I dropped to my knees at the edge of the pool and reached for him. "You're incredible, little guy. You hear me? You're a miracle." He kicked once more toward me, drifting close enough that I could hold his face in both hands. The therapist leaned in. "We'll try again tomorrow. He's going to get stronger." Scooter rested his head against my arm in the water, eyes half closed, breathing steady. That night, I watched the footage over and over. A paralyzed German Shepherd puppy tossed into a dumpster, now kicking through water like it belonged to him. It wasn't just a recovery, it was a rebellion. The 10th session started like the others. Calm, careful, full of small hopes, but none of us were ready for what came next. It was a Friday afternoon. The sun outside the clinic poured golden light through the windows, casting long shadows across the pool room floor. Scooter had been improving in the water, yes, but always just enough to give us slivers of hope. A kick here, a wiggle there. Nothing consistent. Until that day, he was already in the pool, his body suspended by the padded harness, legs half floating beneath him. I stood nearby, towel in hand, cheering him on like I always did. "Come on, Scooter," I called softly. "Show me what you've got." He looked at me and then something changed. It started with his shoulders tensing just slightly, then a shift in his spine. His tail floated higher. One back leg twitched, then the other. And suddenly he kicked hard. Not a spasm, not a flick, a real strong kick. Then another. The therapist gasped, grabbing the harness to stabilize him. But Scooter didn't stop. He paddled forward with everything he had. 4 limbs now, not just 2. "Let him go," I said, my voice shaking. "Let's see what he does." She loosened her hold. He wobbled at first, but kept going, paws slapping the water, ears perked, eyes focused on me like I was the finish line. "Scooter." I dropped to my knees beside the pool. "You're doing it." He paddled halfway across before exhaustion pulled him back under the surface, and we caught him just in time. But he didn't panic. He didn't cry. He smiled. I swear to God that puppy smiled. After we dried him off, I carried him to the grassy patch outside the clinic, the same spot where we'd first tried his wheelchair. The sun was lower now, the air cooler. I set him gently down and stepped back. He sat still for a moment. Then, with visible effort, he shifted his front paws, and then, like lightning had struck his little spine, he pushed. His back leg moved, not just in reflex, not supported, alone. He tried again, wobbled, collapsed. I didn't breathe. Then slowly he tried a third time. He stood. Scooter, the German Shepherd puppy, who had been paralyzed and discarded in a dumpster, stood on his own for 3 whole seconds. And when he fell again, tail wagging furiously, I fell with him onto my knees into tears into the grass because I knew we had crossed the line. There was no going back. He wasn't a broken puppy anymore. He was becoming whole. A week later, Scooter ran. Not far, not fast, but he ran. It happened in the front yard of the foster home that had agreed to take him once he was cleared to leave the clinic. A quiet house just outside Miami with soft green grass, shaded trees, and 2 gentle kids who spoke to him like he was magic. He'd been practicing every day, short bursts, supervised attempts, his wheels always nearby just in case. But on that morning, something was different. He stood on his own with confidence. His legs wobbled, sure, but they held. His muscles twitched like they'd remembered the rhythm. Then a butterfly landed near his nose. Scooter's ears perked. He tilted his head, and before anyone could stop him, he lunged forward. 2 steps, then 4, then a full lopsided run, his back legs catching like old gears coming alive, tail streaming behind him, kids laughing, the sun catching the golden edges of his fur. His paws kicked up little sprays of grass as he chased that butterfly like it was the only thing he ever wanted. And maybe in that moment, it was. I stood by the fence, my heart in my throat, watching the German Shepherd puppy who'd once been thrown away like garbage now sprint across a yard like he'd been waiting his whole life to feel the earth under his feet. His foster mom, Jasmine, wiped her eyes and whispered, "He doesn't even know he's different." "He's not," I said quietly. "Not anymore." He tired quickly, of course, collapsed in the shade after 30 seconds of glory. But oh, that 30 seconds, I'll never forget it. The look in his eyes when I knelt beside him, the way he nudged his head into my chest like he was saying, "We did it." Scooter's cart is still part of his life, and it probably always will be. But it's no longer a symbol of his limits, it's his wings. He goes for walks now, plays tug-of-war with the kids. He even learned how to bark loud, sharp, and way too proud of himself every time. And when he runs on wheels or feet, it's not just movement, it's defiance, it's celebration, it's living. And as I stood there watching him tumble and roll in the grass, with those kids giggling around him, I realized something I hadn't let myself believe until that moment. He was home, not in a kennel, not under medical lights, not on a towel behind clinic glass. Home, safe, and finally happy. But his story didn't end there, because some dogs aren't just meant to be saved. They're meant to save others. He was thrown away like trash, but he became a symbol of everything we fight for. Scooter's journey wasn't just about healing his body, it was about restoring dignity, rewriting fate, and proving that no life is too broken to matter. He showed us what it means to rise when no one expects you to stand even when the world says you can't. Now Scooter visits schools with his foster family. He rolls into classrooms, tail wagging, ears high, wearing a vest that says Ambassador of Hope. Kids gather around him in awe. Some ask about his wheels. Others ask if he hurts. And when they look into his eyes, they see something more powerful than pain. They see resilience. This little German Shepherd puppy, once paralyzed and discarded, now helps others believe in second chances. He sits beside children with disabilities. He nudges the hands of those who've lost pets. He listens. He shines. He's not just a rescue. He's a teacher. He's a reminder that survival isn't enough. Living, really living, is what makes the fight worth it. Scooter's story changed me, and I believe it can change others, because there are more like him out there, forgotten, silent, waiting in the shadows of alleyways and dumpsters, hoping someone like you will care enough to stop, look, and act. This little guy's journey from abandonment to rehabilitation shows how important nonprofit rescue groups really are. Caring for a rescued puppy is more than love. It's responsibility, it's pet care. If Scooter's story touched your heart, please like, comment, and share this video. Every share helps raise awareness. Every view brings hope a little closer to the next puppy left behind. Don't forget to subscribe.